Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. This video will be my first one detailing my experiences playing through all of the different origins. So I do plan one by one to go through each of their paths and see what are my thoughts, what are the things I like and dislike regarding each of the origin options that are available to us. And I will also play a custom character at some point, so I have that experience and can compare it to playing an origin as well. So these videos, they're going to be more my general thoughts. I'm going to do them in a non-spoiler fashion. The information here you would know for the most part if you watch the trailers or if you have seen the panels from hell. But then when we do a full ranking video of all the different origins, that's when I'll really dig into the spoilers and the details and kind of pick apart what each of them provides. But for right now, we're just going to keep it general so you all can get an idea of what are some things you might want to play in your follow-up playthroughs, right? And the first one I'll cover is Wyll, since obviously he was my first playthrough. I talked a lot about him before the game even came out and said that pretty much everyone should choose him as their first origin. And I'll say right up front, I had an absolute blast playing as him. But I do think there are some drawbacks and some things that potentially could have been done better. Let's start with just a brief overview of what is in his origin. So Wyll is pretty much the major good guy of the group, right? It's called the Blade of Frontiers because he's known for traveling around and killing monsters and defending the little innocent people. And more so than other characters in your group, he's someone who's known. He's someone who's popular. You know, when he shows up, people just assume, oh, okay, he's going to help us. But what those same people don't realize is that he's entered into a pact with a patron, a devil. And that devil is responsible for his powers and what he's able to do. So it creates a dynamic where on the outside, everybody sees him as this hero, as this incredible person. But on the inside, there's a part of him who doesn't believe that he's a hero and knows that he's in this pact with this devil and that it's not going to go anywhere good. So I felt like all of that was extremely intriguing and made me very interested in playing as him. So starting with the good aspects of going through his origin, I really appreciate that it gives you multiple points where you have to make major decisions that have an impact on your overall origin story. And looking at the other origins, I don't feel like they all work that way. I feel like some of the other ones, there's some pretty clear, this is the good choice, this is the evil choice, and you know, it's cookie cutter, which direction are you going to go? Whereas with Wyll, it's really more than just good and evil. It's also how these choices can potentially impact you and also how you feel about what are some of the different aspects of that choice. And so there are a couple of times where I actually had to sit back and say, how do I really want to approach this? What is the type of playthrough that I want? And I love that. That gives me that Dragon Age feel, that Mass Effect feel, of really hard hitting decisions that are going to have an impact. So definitely appreciate that, and felt like, again, they did it multiple times. So it's not like just one major choice and then you just coast. Like there were multiple times where I felt like there was some really nice questions that were posed to you, and the major decisions came early. That's the other thing. For some of the other origins, I feel like Act 1, they pretty much coast through it, and then it's Act 2 or 3 where you really have to start making decisions. Whereas for Wyll, right from the start, you're making some pretty major decisions that can have ramifications which last throughout the game. So I love that. I think it's great. I love it when games work that way. So definitely appreciated that about his story. I also really enjoy the relationship with his patron. Again, so he's a warlock. He has this relationship with a patron that gives him his powers. And that was one of the main draws for me about playing as Wyll, because I don't feel like I've ever played a game that tried to give me the full warlock experience, where not only do you have the spells, but you also have this direct relationship with your patron, and your patron has, lots of line of dialogue. She has her own personality, so there's interaction back and forth that can make the relationship very engaging. Never experienced that before, and so I wanted to in this game. And I felt like Larian Studios did a great job of trying to put you in the shoes of someone who's locked into a contract with this devious individual that you really don't want to be tied to. She was very entertaining to talk with the entire game, had real personality, but there's also is some level of character development. You can learn about her. You can learn about her history. It's not a crazy amount, but it is enough where I felt very satisfied. And I'm really interested in what is it like when you're playing as an evil version as Wyll, which of course you're only really able to do if you take direct control of him, because he does consider himself to be a hero and doesn't want to stick around for a bunch of evil actions. But I'm curious if I play as an evil version of Wyll that actually loves being in this pact and has no problems whatsoever being tied to this devil, does the game allow for that? Does the game give me dialogue options that'll let me do that? I'm going to take a guess to say Larian probably did consider that some players will want to play that way, and they've given you options to be able to do that. But I'm looking forward to going through that playthrough myself, because there are definitely some options in my conversation with her where I was like, I wonder how the relationship changes if I chose that instead. So really, really cool stuff. I feel like if there's an aspect of the game that adds to the replayability of it, that's automatically a notch in its favor, right? And I feel like his relationship with his patron is a great reason to dive back into the game and play through it again in a different style. And then the last thing that I'll mention that I feel like really sticks out is his romance with Karlach, which I was really looking forward to, because Larian had mentioned that he starts out the game basically on a mission to kill Karlach. And then it's possible for you to change your mind and for romance to still grow. And I wanted to find out, hey, what is that like? How does that change the dynamic? I wasn't completely satisfied with the level of effort I had to put into convincing her to trust me. I felt like that happened a little bit too quickly. It would have been nice if I had to put more work into getting her to the point that she was comfortable with a relationship with Wyll. But I do feel like playing as Wyll gave me a little bit more reactivity with her. And just in general, at least in my mind, it made the relationship more special, especially since I can't think of a game where you start out trying to kill an individual and then you're able to get into a relationship with them. Like, I can think of games where you all start off maybe somewhat as enemies, or you have to really get someone to warm up to you. But I can't think of a game where you start out where the first mission you get is, hey, go find this chick and kill her. And then it turns out you meet her and you're like, you know what? No, you're going to be my girl instead. So I just found that really, really enjoyable. It gave me something different, something I hadn't experienced in game before. And you all probably already know Karlach is amazing anyway. So Wyll having some special reactivity with her, I feel like it just makes it really, really cool. And I really, really enjoyed that aspect of his playthrough. So before we move on to the things I don't like about his playthrough, there's actually one more thing I want to mention, specifically going back to decisions, and that they come early and often. Part of what I really like about this game and about Wyll's playthrough specifically is that sometimes doing the right thing can have negative consequences for you. And I feel like that's not really something we see in gaming. Most of the time, negative consequences are associated with you performing evil actions. But if you do the good thing, if you do the quote unquote right thing, oftentimes the game kind of rewards you for that and tries to make sure that your path is as smooth as possible. Whereas playing as Wyll, depending on how you handle certain things, you can do what you might consider to be morally right, or what the role playing you're doing as Wyll would consider morally right, but it still ends up in a negative way for you overall. And you just have to be satisfied with, hey, I know myself, I know what I do and do not feel is good aligned, and so I'm still comfortable with this decision, even though it didn't necessarily turn out the way I wanted it to, right? I feel like that was really, really cool. And I really enjoyed how Larian put that into the game for Will's origin. But moving to things that I don't like, I feel like there should have been a little bit more reactivity to some of the negative things that can happen to Will. Because in at least one case, it's obvious. You can look at him and tell that something has changed. And you do meet some people who know Will or knew Will before he had a tadpole in his head. And so they could just look at him and tell, hey, something has happened to you, something is different, what's wrong? And they'll have like one line of dialogue or something of that sort, and then just kind of move on. Where I feel like there should have been more reactivity, more dialogue, more conversations about what Will has been through and what he's had to sacrifice in order to do the right thing. All right. So I was a little, even though I really, really like the rewrite Larian did for Will and feel like his origin story is fantastic to play through, I do feel like there should have been a little bit more reactivity to some of the consequences of decisions that you make. And kind of on that same note, I kind of wish Larian had leaned a little bit more into the family aspect of Will, because that was something they talked about a lot leading up to the game. That Will is from this famous family in Baldur's Gate. He's known in Baldur's Gate, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it's possible that I missed content. I feel like I did the vast majority of the game, but the only member of Will's family that I ever met was his father, right? So I was expecting, and maybe this was just me, maybe nobody else felt this way, but when I hear family, I'm assuming that maybe he has siblings, maybe he has cousins. He has multiple people that are in Baldur's Gate that care about him. And when they see him, when they realize that he's basically been through hell to, try to do the right thing and try to save people, there are going to be other folks who have empathy, who are going to try to help them, et cetera, et cetera. And that was not the experience that I had in my playthrough at all. And while I feel like they did a great job with his father as far as the way he looks, his voice, and that aspect of how he's handling the game, I don't feel like there's nearly enough dialogue between him and Will. I feel like there should be more content. I feel like they should have had more to do together. I kind of feel like the relationship between them or the reunion between them, depending on the decision you make, it felt a little bit glossed over. And I would have liked the opportunity to delve into it more, for him to be able to do more things with his father, things of that nature. And so I don't feel like they completely delivered on the aspect of, hey, he's part of this really famous family in Baldur's Gate, and their name is known in Baldur's Gate, et cetera, et cetera. It didn't feel that way, at least in my good aligned playthrough. Again, I don't know what happens if you spend the whole game making more evil aligned choices with Will. And then finally, I've already mentioned this in my review of the game, so I'm not going to harp on it a whole lot here, but I definitely did find his ending to be lackluster. This was reinforced by Carlock's overall ending being lackluster as well. So being in a romance with her, I was dissatisfied with how that ended. And I know they've added some new ones since that time. Makes it a little bit better, but I feel like it could definitely stand to be fleshed out further. And definitely for his overall story, for his arc, I do not feel like you get a proper epilogue that equals up to the epicness of what you've done and what Will can potentially become. And so they've already mentioned that they're going to add more scenes for more characters. Looking forward to seeing what they come up with for Will, and hopefully it'll be something that really ends his story properly. And that's it. That's my overall thoughts on the origin story. The only thing that I'm not really sure about is I am in the midst of a Shadowheart playthrough right now, and so I'm still getting a sense of what it's like having Will as a party member. Of course, now I have access to his voice acting, his overall personality, and so I'm getting a sense of whether or not I feel like he's a better party member than he is when you're actually playing through the origin. but I'm still in Act 1, so I don't have enough data yet to give you a definitive answer about how I feel on that particular subject. So it'll definitely be something that we cover once I end up ranking all the different origins. But anyway, that's the video. That's my thoughts overall. Looking forward to hearing you all's feedback. Have you had an opportunity to play through the game as well? If so, did you enjoy it? Is there anything here that you agree with or you disagree with? And if you're playing as someone else, what's been your experience so far? Who do you feel like I should really take the time to play through next? Hope you all enjoyed this video. Take care.